Welcome to Arts in the City. I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson, and we're here at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in Manhattan. The Cooper Hewitt was closed for a 3-year renovation, and we're here to see if the wait was worth it.
It was really a very complicated Rubik's Cube, this entire renovation. And it's pretty spectacular that we did it in 3 years because there were parts of the building, again, built in 1899, that hadn't been touched since that time. So we really renovated and renewed every millimeter of the space, all at the same time thinking, what is the best way to present design and make design relevant to all of our audiences when we reopen the doors?
Caroline Bowman is the director of the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. Housed in the famed Andrew Carnegie Mansion, the museum reopened to the public this past December.
Our whole mission is to inspire, educate, and empower people through design and about design. Design is the most accessible form of visual culture, and we really wanted to educate people about our vast permanent collection. We have over 210,000 objects. Obviously, we don't have the space to show all of those objects, so the digital tables that are scattered throughout the museum allow you to see things in the permanent collection that you wouldn't see just on the second floor.
New updates also include the Immersion Room, a space that uses projectors and those digital tables to display the largest collection of wallpapers in North America. The Process Lab, an area where you can solve problems in design using hands-on activities, and this device, known simply as the pen. Starting next month, everyone who enters the museum will receive the pen for the duration of their visit. It will track everywhere you go and everything you see while you're in the museum. Once you go home, you can log on to a website found on your admissions ticket to view all this information easily on your computer or smartphone. Caroline Bowman believes these new features will keep you coming back to the Cooper Hewitt for more.
The whole idea is we want to welcome you. We want to be the friendliest museum on Museum Mile, and I believe that we are. So come back today, come back tomorrow, come back often.
A modernist approach to architecture embraces the phrase, form follows function. Tony Guida met one architect who's taken that philosophy to the next level.
Architects, as we know, are craftsmen, master builders. But what if an architect is also a bioresearcher who studies bone growth, slime mold, and bivalves like mussels? What that architect builds is likely to be surprising.
Like this, a curious construction that resembles a teepee at its base and a slinky up top. It looks homely, even primitive. But listen to its creator, architect David Benjamin, tell you about the bricks he used to build it.
Each brick is made up of chopped up corn stalks.
Corn stalks?
Corn stalks.
Like I would pull off an ear of corn.
Yep. But that's a good point. It's not the corn kernels.
Okay.
It's the corn stalks, so it's the byproduct, the waste of agriculture.
Architecture meets synthetic biology. It's Benjamin's passion and the reason he named his architecture firm The Living. Already he has created Living Light, an interactive canopy in Seoul, Korea, whose lights announce air quality conditions across the city. Soon to come in New York's East River, amphibious architecture, floating lights that communicate the level of the river's pollution. Both projects aimed at raising awareness about climate change. And this, a 40-foot building dubbed Hi-Fi that grew from corn stalks.
So we take this agricultural waste, chop it up, combine it with mycelium, which is a mushroom root.
Really?
And in about 5 days, with no added energy or light, it grows into solid objects, creating a new type of brick that will be composted at the end of its installation.
Well, it's sort of like dust thou art and to dust thou shalt return.
Yeah, we were thinking building materials could have a kind of ecosystem and cycle like our bodies do, like plants do. So yeah, exactly like what you're saying.
What David Benjamin has given us just might be a game changer. In the movie 2001, The Space Odyssey, a monolith seems to trigger vast transitions in human evolution, such as from apes to man. Could this be the next evolution?
I think if the idea catches on, actually it could be revolutionary.
Pedro Gandano of the MoMA PS1 Museum. This year it gave its prestigious Young Architects Award to David Benjamin for this building.
If you can think or imagine the idea that people could get a little packet with mushroom roots and they could mix it with whatever is available and just make it home and then build their own structures.
Revolutionary indeed, not just for primitive cultures, but for urban landscapes as well.
The person who is sort of the progenitor of the modern movement in city planning was actually a biologist by the name of Patrick Geddes, by looking at cities as living organisms.
Ron Schiffman, architect and urban planner at Pratt Institute.
All of a sudden, by studying nature, you really can begin to study the next generation of the way of building. And unless we begin to do that, unless we begin to look at our environment from that perspective, we're not going to be able to survive as a species.
Architects and engineers tell us our buildings produce a heavier carbon footprint than anything else in our environment. From the enormous energy it takes to produce glass and steel to the energy wasted by older, inefficient structures, our built environment is profligate, a luxury experts say that is increasingly unaffordable. David Benjamin's brick, grown, no energy wasted, points toward a brave new sustainable world.
It is one of those things that is a game changer.
Susan Sinazi is the editor-in-chief and publisher of Metropolis, a magazine of architecture and design.
And I think the fact that David was able to accomplish a whole building, no matter how primitive it is, because it is primitive, but that's what its charm is, I just find that really amazing. And maybe that is the monolith right now. And I think that's incredibly encouraging because human intelligence at work is fascinating to watch.
Hi-Fi has been dismantled. It exists no longer as a building, but its promise lives on. All 10,000 bricks used to build it have been composted, returned to the soil. I'm Tony Guida for Arts in the City.
Worn by women for every occasion, the high heel is one of the most iconic and popular pieces of footwear in the world. Even Cinderella had a pair. Beth Kovetz has more.
Nothing in our culture is as glorified and yet as low to the ground as women's shoes. The Brooklyn Museum's Killer Heels exhibit looks at the history of the high heel from the 16th century to today. We caught up with curator Lisa Small. Lisa, what makes an object a work of art?
Well, it's a complicated question. I mean, you can talk about things like intentionality, the intention of an artist. If you go back to the idea of a ready-made, an object is a work of art if an artist says it is.
What is this exhibit saying about women and gender and the functionality of women?
One of the things we wanted to do is show how, in the realm of shoe design, in terms of the type of shoes a woman might choose to wear, high shoes, elevated shoes, there's so much of a range of designs and things that they could be trying to suggest about themselves, issues of identity, of confidence, of power, this sort of obsessive nature of high heels, what it does to their body and what they like or don't like about that, who they're wearing it for. Are they wearing it to be seen? Are they wearing it for themselves because they like to be aware of their body? I mean, you know, if you've worn high heels, you can't forget that you're wearing that. So there's a whole host of reasons, but I think we wanted to explore, particularly through the historical shoes, how elevated shoes have been a thing for quite a long time, you know, centuries in fact, and they've had some different meanings, but also some very consistent meanings.
And what were those consistent meanings?
They've always been related to issues of high status. Elevated shoes were shoes that you wore when clearly you didn't have to do very much physically. You didn't have to walk, you didn't have to do manual labor.
Does a shoe tell a story?
Shoes definitely tell a story, you know, and we have shoes here that have been worn and belong to Marilyn Monroe. Those shoes have their own aura about them, I think. They're Ferragamo stilettos from the 50s. And then there are shoes that have been made by artists, designers who are doing something so completely out there, you wonder what the story in their own mind was for the person they envisioned to wear those shoes and under what circumstances. So I do think that they tell a story both on an individual level as well as a broader cultural level. In organizing the exhibition thematically rather than chronologically, even though we have historical shoes in the show, it was more about looking at shoes through these wider lenses. We're standing here in the section called Metamorphosis, which is really about both how your body is transformed by any high-heel shoe, but also how high-heeled shoe design itself in this section can be a kind of hybrid or an object that looks like it's in flux in some way.
How would you like a viewer to approach this show?
Come with an open mind. I know that many of the people who come to see this show are people that are already predisposed to love or obsess over high heels, but I would also like people to come who either have, no fixed opinion about them or even who hate them, to sort of just learn a little bit about this social and cultural history behind high heels and sort of come away with an appreciation for the form as this item of material culture, as something that says a lot about the person who wore it in that time period, about what the interests of that time period were, to sort of have a broader appreciation of the form rather than just, oh my God, shoes, or oh my God, heels.
But still, oh my God.
But still, we'll take oh my God, heels, because, that's a great part of our audience, and, we love that they're excited about it.
I think you made a lot of people really happy.
Oh, I hope so.
Are any of these available in the gift shop?
No, they are not.
Thanks so much for spending time with us. This has been Lisa Beth Kovetz for Arts in the City.
Hip-hop culture has been around for over 40 years, and New York City can claim this international art form as its own. We looked at this global phenomenon through the words of the hip-hop artists themselves.
I ain't no joke. I used to let the mic smoke. Now I slam it when I'm done and make sure it's broke.
Hip-hop created a musical landscape in the 70s and early 80s by giving New York or the Bronx, especially the Bronx, a musical foundation or a new start, because we were just coming off the 60s where the entire city was bankrupt. That environment kind of gave birth to hip-hop. Hip-hop is a culture based on 4 foundational elements: DJing, MCing or rap, graffiti, and breakdancing.
People use the terms interchangeably, rap with hip-hop, whereas hip-hop is the bigger culture. Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live.
Coming from the disco era, you know what I mean, we were inner city kids. We couldn't get into disco, so we had to recreate that disco. And that's what basically hip-hop started out as, like the bastard child of disco. I mean, it was our rebellion against that and our recreation of it at the same time.
You see, I am Wonder Mike, and I like to say hello.
The turntables became our instruments. So a lot of people in the inner cities, they didn't have money for instruments. So you had to find those sounds somewhere. So you dug through your pop's Cradle records, and you just listening for these different instruments and sounds, and then you pulled from those different sounds and made a total new creation. People forget that the DJ is the backbone of hip-hop. That's where it all started. DJ spinning at parties.
Kool Herc is actually documented as the father of hip-hop. When he was playing the type of music he was playing, and maybe the way he was playing it, it brought out a different type of energy than ever experienced from that demographic at that time.
And he just started putting one drum break behind the next drum break, and you would just go to Herc party just waiting for those breaks.
B-boy and B-girl comes from Kool Herc. B meaning break, okay? Break boy. You dance on the break. That's it.
It all ties into dancing and really going off during the break beat of a song at a party back in the days.
And then there was different parts of the record where you could talk over it and then the beat's still going, but you don't lose the attention of the record or the main part of the record. That evolved to MCs getting on the mic and just saying things to keep the party going, which evolved into actually rhyming and rapping because these different MCs will have little sayings that they said.
Party people, if you're ready to rock, let me hear you scream.
A teenager named Africa Bambaataa started the Zulu Nation at the Bronx River Projects. It was a new type of gang which focused in on music and dance.
Bambaataa was the first guy to say, hey, let's all come together. You can all play on my set. So he was integral in uniting hip-hop. And in '82, when Planet Rock came out, became a universal hit. That just added to his prominence and his outreach to the rest of the world. The connection between hip-hop and graffiti, it's an urban thing. Though it was here before the actual rest of the elements of the culture, the people involved in graffiti were directly involved in hip-hop as well.
Fab Five Freddy was the bridge between hip-hop and graffiti. He brought the South Bronx and the people from Harlem downtown to where the hipsters and where Keith Haring was and Madonna were hanging out. Before he was a DJ at Yo MTV Raps, he was a graffiti artist.
MTV made hip-hop global. It broke it out of being a niche kind of music or something like these black kids or Latin kids are doing in certain urban areas to an actual viable genre of music that reached middle America and mainstream America. Particularly Walk This Way was the record that took hip-hop next level on MTV, man. That collaboration with Run DMC and Aerosmith was just perfect. That was really the moment that hip-hop became global, and MTV played a big part in that. UK, South Africa, where, you know, English is one of their major languages. You see it in Brazil, you see it in Japan. You know, they're big into the culture, man, and you'll go to a concert in Japan, man, and they're rapping every word in English, and then they don't speak a word of English.
Hip-hop connected the world and music together. This is what the Score did. This is what Puffy did. Dr. Dre did some of this stuff too. That record that I've done for Shakira. Hello? It's hip-hop and the pop working together. You know what I mean?
I think institutions are trying to preserve hip-hop when you see places like art galleries. You see it in fashion. You see it in business. I think that's preserving hip-hop, even when people don't realize that's actually preserving it.
Welcome to Hush Tours, the original and the only hip-hop sightseeing tour on the planet.
Hush Tours is a hip-hop sightseeing tour based on the culture. It's guided by the pioneers of hip-hop, and we take people around the city to different places that were relevant to the development of the culture. Nashville celebrates country music. New York City needs to celebrate the birth of hip-hop.
We created something from nothing. And hip-hop was the first art form that spoke to me. People who looked like me, people I could look up to, the way they put these words together and tell these stories about places that look like where I live. And that's just like what hip-hop is all about. It's just evolving and staying ahead of the curve and being something aspirational.
Broadway musicals, obscure plays, one-man shows, New York has it all. Ernabel Demillo takes a look at a new type of theater that has exploded onto the scene in recent years.
Are you looking for a different theater experience? Well, thanks to a new wave of immersion theater, audience goers are no longer sitting back to enjoy the show, they are a part of the show.
From disco dancing to high-flying aerials, welcome to immersive theater where audience members are getting in on the act. In David Byrne's Here Lies Love, which recently closed in New York and is now on a worldwide tour, the public theater was transformed into a disco.
The audience participation is the best because it makes everything fresh, you know. And one of our numbers, Dancin', where Imelda Marcos goes to Studio 54, it's this big disco number, and you're right in front of the audience. At the end of the song, you know, you do this strong pose, and I'm wearing this gold disco dress, and I hear someone in the audience go, "Work, bitch." And it was the thrill of my life. It felt so good because you just felt like you really connected with them.
In Sleep No More, audience members are required to wear masks, and you might find a cast member sipping wine with you. Then there is Fuerza Bruta Huayra, where audience members may find themselves dangling from the rafters.
It's a lot of fun, yeah. I think
As an actor in a traditional play, you may be in a kind of trance where the only world that exists is the world on stage of the characters, where it's set, for example. And this show, it strips away all of that, not just in breaking down the fourth wall, but the audience becomes a part of the show in so many ways, and it's a shared experience on many levels.
Fuerza Bruta Huayra, which means brute force wind, is the latest installment in a trilogy that started 14 years ago with De La Guarda.
Why do you think audiences like shows like this?
It breaks that fourth wall, the traditional theater. You're no longer sitting in a soft seat watching something on stage. You are now part of the action. You know, when there's scenes happening behind you and music playing, and you're in it. You are immersed. The word itself is exactly that. You are in the show.
Immersive theater is not new.
I think immersive theater has always been around. I mean, you can go back to the days of the shaman. It's really shamanistic.
What is new, according to theater journalist and commentator Patrick Pacheco, are the rules. We sat down with him at Chez Josephine restaurant on Theater Row.
I think we're seeing a new sort of establishment of rules now, and there's no question that it is a trend, and it's a trend of intimate, small theater, everywhere from 100 people in a room to 2 people in a cab. You have to buy into it. I think particularly New Yorkers tend to be rather sophisticated and skeptical about immersive theater. I think that the creative talent that are creating these experiences have to be intuitive psychologists. They actually have to realize on some level what the audience will or will not take, to what degree an audience will or will not participate.
For the actors, this can be quite challenging.
So you have no idea what the audience are going to do, whether they're going to be like standoffish or into you or too much into you, which can happen as well. Sometimes people kind of trying to drag you down and you're like, no, I'm on a rope, I have to go back up.
Ticket buyers tend to be younger. One reason is many of these shows require the audience to stand up for hours. Another rule breaker for some shows like Fuerza Bruta, producers encourage cell phone photos and videos.
Do you think we're going to see more of these immersive
I think
plays?
so. I think the difficulty, the challenge there is making them work economically. These experiences tend to be, to admit only about 100 people or maybe 200 people at the most. They have not been able to transfer to Broadway yet.
In the meantime, immersive theater has found a steady audience off-Broadway. And for those wanting a different experience, you may find an unexpected connection. Lane recalls his favorite memory with a young theatergoer and his mom.
And I was coming down above them, and I think it must have been his mum just kind of held him up. And it was almost like she wanted to gift him to me, And we were kind of there, and he was just staring into my eyes, and yeah, moments like that, they're really real. And I think, again, going back to breaking down the fourth wall, that's what makes it beautiful, because you come out of it having changed inside. Something internal's gone on, and you've shared something with a complete stranger.
If you want to have that moment with Liam or the other actors in Fuerza Bruta Huayra, you can catch a show right here at the Darrell Roth Theater near Union Square. I'm Ernabel Demillo for Arts in the City.
I'm Donna Hanover here at Broadway's Walter Kerr Theater. Most actors yearn for a great death scene sometime in their careers. The amazing Jefferson Mays has 8 of them in every single performance of A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Well, I fall from a great height. I am devoured by cannibals. I am done in with an axe.
Does the show ever depress you, considering all that?
I find it oddly liberating. it's not, I don't think of the death so much. I think of the resurrection afterwards.
In the musical, poverty-stricken Monty Navarro learns he is actually a member of the rich Dysquith family and an heir to the Earl. They reject him, so he bumps off the ones who stand between him and the title. Jefferson plays them all. But that's not unusual for him. In his first Broadway show, I Am My Own Wife, he won a Tony playing 37 characters. He discovered acting in college.
I did my first play, and I fell in love. 12th night, I played Malvolio at the age of like 17, 18, and couldn't even grow a mustache for the role, so I ended up drawing it on my upper lip with my sister's eyeliner.
Who's your favorite Dysquith?
I don't like to say because it just makes the other Dysquiths jealous, and they won't speak to me. This is where the magic happens. This is where all the Dysquiths live when I'm not wearing them. We have Lady Salome Dysquith, Lady Hyacinth Dysquith, who's very well upholstered, Lord Reverend Ezekiel Dysquith, Asquith Dysquith Sr., Lord Adalbert Dysquith, and I know there are a few hanging around here. This is Adalbert's fox that he sort of carries around.
It looks scarily real.
It is. Well, it is real, and your grandmother probably wore one. And then all my hats are up here. So I essentially come running off stage from the light into the dark, and am immediately set upon by sometimes up to 4 dressers who rip my clothes off and then thrust me into one of these outfits. They're like, what are they? They're like the pit crew at the Indianapolis 500, yes.
One of his props is a favorite.
Personal prop of mine that I wanted to use in the show, they needed cane of the period, and it belonged to my great-great-great-uncle Jacob Mays, who was at the Battle of Gettysburg. He was blinded in the artillery, and this is his opera cane. It's engraved J. Mays.
Separate from his on-stage props and costumes, Jefferson almost always wears a hat in his own life.
Your antics on stage, antics not to be insulted.
Not at all. I take great pride in my antics.
But you're famous for your hat collection,
I guess so. It's a bit of I've always had a hat collection ever since I was a small child. And my father, a very clever man with his hands, an artist, would make hats for me for Halloween. So I had like a Norman knight helmet or a Civil War kepi. So yes, that started me on my way.
What did your mom do?
My mother was a children's librarian and an actor herself back in the 1950s. She was a beautiful woman and would read aloud to me every night. And I was amazed because my mother, talk about shape-shifting, when she would read, like Charles Dickens' Great Expectation, her face, this familiar woman's face would transform into all these different characters she was doing.
Jefferson showed us a little more backstage magic.
It looks like armor on stage and moves like armor, but it's plastic. Couldn't be more tatty, but it's lovely to look at.
His dressing room is genuinely old and historic.
And think about all the people who have been in this dressing room. Angela Lansbury, this was her dressing room when she was doing the Sondheim. And Elaine Stritch, this was her last dressing room on Broadway.
Do you feel the former residents of this
The
dressing
ghosts?
room?
Yes, I think there's some of Tallulah Bankhead's face powder still in the carpet.
Also in his dressing room is a photo with his wife, Australian actress Susan Lyons, who read Monty's lines aloud to help Jefferson learn all the Dysquith lines. Now, after a year in which he and Bryce both got Tony nominations and the show and director won Tony Awards, Jefferson still gives tremendous focus to each character, and he's happy each time the audience gives up belly laughs.
People leave with smiles on their faces. There's nothing more gratifying than that as an actor. And they leave lighter of step and lighter of heart.
Adalbert.
I'm Donna Hanover for Arts in the City.
That's our show for today. For more information on any of our stories or to watch them at any time, visit our website at the link below. I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson, and I'll see you next month on Arts in the City.